The election of Donald Trump means enormous changes in a whole slew of policies, changes that are already popping up across the nation, especially when it potentially could come to gun laws. Republican lawmakers in the state of Washington, emboldened by Trump's election, they've now introduced a bill that, get this, would allow people to carry concealed guns into sports stadiums, just like other state laws allow guns in schools, bars, airports, churches, just about everywhere else. But I just want you to think about armed football fans in a stadium near you. Then think about how common scenes like this are this recently at a game just this past Thursday night. This is a Chiefs-Raiders game where drunken fans got into a massive brawl. Security unable to help or intervene. Now imagine this same scene after last call here with jerseys and fired up fans here. And imagine with some of the people involved in this brawl, except we'll arm them. Okay, you're thinking, well, that's Washington State, Rich, or maybe Oklahoma or Texas, some other state not anywhere near our viewing area. Never happened here. Well, maybe it could at the Meadowlands, Yankee Stadium, Yale Bowl, because our region has strict gun controls, you say, and this couldn't happen. Well, slow that down, because President-elect Trump, he supports concealed gun law reciprocity, and that means any state would have to honor the concealed carry laws of the state where a person got their gun, not where they are at the time. So New York would have to let gun owners from Washington State bring guns inside our own stadiums. For more on that and what steps states can take to combat it, let's bring in our guest, Jon Steuer. Jon is a columnist for the Connecticut Post as well as a lecturer at Yale University. You know, I read your piece on Sunday where you were proactively imagining a possibility that I think the majority of the folks in Connecticut wouldn't like to see. It deals with reciprocity laws as they relate to guns. Explain that for folks who don't realize what could theoretically happen that the president-elect has talked openly about in one state that could carry over to another.
Yeah, that's right. Reciprocity just means that one state has to recognize the laws of another state. So if you have a state that allows for open carry of an AR-15 in public, anywhere in a church or a school or a coffee shop, that another state has to recognize the right of that individual to carry that weapon in a school or a cafe or church.
Now let's put that in context of Texas and Connecticut, for example. Give an idea to the very divergent gun laws there as it relates to open carry, the kind of guns one could carry versus what happened in Connecticut, especially in the aftermath of what happened in Sandy Hook.
Right. So in the aftermath of Sandy Hook, our legislators did the right thing, and that was to ban semi-automatic rifles and large capacity magazines. Other states don't have laws against that. Other states also allow you to walk around with those guns with a permit. And so the danger here is that that Congress, the U.S. Congress, will insist on what are called reciprocity laws that make it allowable to walk around Connecticut in a school, in a coffee shop, or wherever with an AR-15 or any kind of semi-automatic rifle slung over your shoulder. And that person cannot be prosecuted even if that act is banned in the state of Connecticut.
You know, I spoke earlier this hour, Jon, to Senator Murphy about this very possibility that you discussed in your column. And he said it's going to be a fight in Washington. He believes that this will come forward here. It's almost perverse where you have Republicans traditionally taking the role of state rights and Democrats taking the position of, you know, overarching laws that apply to all 50 states, almost reversing roles. But nonetheless, while there'll be legal challenges and everything else, you surmise even if those legal challenges or hurdles are crossed, and even if there are enough votes in Washington to move it forward, it doesn't mean it's game, set, match. And you talk about in the context of insurance. Explain how insurance could be a mitigating factor here.
Insurance is a way to privately regulate public behavior. It is a way to force deterrence and to force individuals to be accountable for their actions. Say we live in this dystopian universe where somebody's walking around with an AR-15 slung around their shoulder, and say there's an accident that happens that's not criminal, that's just an accident. Well, who is going to be held responsible for that damage, either death or injury? Well, it should be the gun owner, because that is the person who should be bearing all the risk of carrying that weapon in public. Well, if that person is responsible for that damage, somebody has to pay. It's going to be that person, and so therefore you have to have some kind of law that forces that person to be insured.
Now, historically, while that makes sense, John, you can't drive a car if you don't have insurance. Why shouldn't you have insurance if you're going to have a gun? They say it's an instrument of death. Clearly, a lot of people die in this country by accident, through cars, etc. Right. The insurance companies have said, you can't look at us. That's a little weak, right?
I mean, they're right that they should not be held liable for criminal behavior, and I don't think any sane, reasonable person would. Just as I don't expect anybody to be paying for vehicular homicide or vehicular manslaughter. And I think the same standard should apply to guns. What I'm talking about is just accidents. Accidents happen. So that's what we're talking about here, is that just the presence of a firearm increases the likelihood of injury or worse. That's why I say in my piece that the insurance companies are being a little coy about not wanting to indemnify crime. Of course we wouldn't want them to do that. What they're really saying, I suspect, is that guns are really dangerous. Just being around a gun, if you are an actuary, raises the risk of injury or harm, and so if I were an insurance company, I might want to not touch that. They just might need a little coaxing, and that's where state legislators come in.
It's fascinating where this goes, especially in the aftermath of the election, where even with Republicans doing better than Democrats in November, certain referendums passed that restricted rights in Nevada and other places, but yet you're hearing words out of Washington about expanding gun rights, at least on a national level. So we'll see how this plays out. But John, I certainly appreciate a few minutes. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, coming up next, we will change gears and take a look at some local headlines.